All right, so we're doing part two of the mill project here, and I made some additions here for this part, and you'll see them kind of characterized in this drawing here. So where you'll see that there's a notch or a slot here and then a slot here. I purposely did them different sizes, so we have to do some tool changes and things like that. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to focus on the first one. If we notice over here, it's a 1/2 inch wide. We notice that it's a 1/4 inch away from the edge. We notice that it is 125 thousandths deep. So all this is totally doable. Now, the first thing to say is that it is completely okay and even recommended to go ahead and actually lay this part out much like we did with the holes. That way you can see exactly where your slot's going to go. So visuals are always a very good thing. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to show you how I would do it. And again, it's not exactly the way that it has to be done, but the way that I would do it and give you some ideas and at least give you some exposure before you get a chance to do it yourself. Okay, so the first thing here is you'll notice that this is sitting a lot higher. I went ahead and changed my parallels out to get this up because otherwise I would have been machining my jaws in order to achieve that slot. Okay? And then I went ahead and I put my edge finder in and I picked up this edge of the part. I didn't really have to pick up this one because the slot goes all the way through, so I don't really have any Y regulation that I have to meet. Like I don't have to go to a particular place in Y. So X was the only thing that I was worried about. So I know exactly where the center of this tool is to the edge of the part is 0 right now. And from there we can go ahead and make whatever calculations necessary. So we're going to do that very quickly. So if we see that we're a 1/4 inch away from the edge, and it's a 1/2 inch. So if I got a 1/4 here, and so if I move over a 1/4, then my tool is essentially going to be, the center of it's going to be right there, but I need to go 1/2 of that as well. So if you add another 1/4 inch to that, okay, then it will actually, if you go in a 1/2 inch, it will actually put the mill right in the center of that slot. It's a very basic calculation. Again, this is just for exposure. Don't worry about this. Watch it again. It'll probably make a little bit more sense. But again, when I'm cutting, okay, I'm setting my DRO for the center of the tool to the edge here. So if I move over, I have to move over an additional amount of the radius in order to get to the center of that slot. And I know that half of 500 is 250, and that's the center of the slot from here. And then add that 250 together. That's a total of a 1/2 inch that I have to come over. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to set our tool. So we're going to wind this over here, and I'm going to go on my DRO exactly to 500, so I'm there now. And now, just like I was talking about with the last milling episode, milling this part to length, I really want to keep everything up in here. I want to keep that rigidity. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick with that right now, and I'm going to wind this down, okay? And I'm going to get some clearance there, and that way I can drive my tool over top. So now I got my tool over top. And now I can go ahead and set the Z0. So I'm going to first make sure that this is loose and then pushed all the way up, and then I'm going to tighten that down so I know that this is all the way up against there and it can't go any higher. So I know that's going to be my 0. And now I'm going to bring it down, and I'm not going to crash the tool, I promise. I'm looking at this very, very closely. I'm going to get down on its level so that I can see how far away I am. And then I'm actually going to use a piece of paper, okay, and I'm going to move it slightly as I'm bringing that tool down close. I can see the gap closing because of the contrast of the dark tool and the white paper. And I'm going to just set this to where, all right, it's starting to drag right now. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more. I can't move it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and call that set for now. Okay, so I have that here. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to drive it off of my part. Now, I realize paper is actually about 3 to 4 thousandths thick or so. So even though I was touching and I couldn't move it, it doesn't mean that the cutter was dragging against the steel, okay? That's not what we're trying to do here. Notice that there's no holes in this. So I know that I'm pretty darn close to where I'm supposed to be in that regard. So with that, now I can go ahead and loosen up my thimble down here like we've seen in previous videos and set that to 0. I know that I want to go 125 thousandths deep. I am not going to take all of that in one shot. Okay, that's simply not going to happen here. So I'm going to break it up. For you guys, it's going to end up being probably about 25 thousandths per pass. But we're going to go ahead and accelerate that a little bit for the sake of this video. So I'm in high range over here. I already know what my RPM is supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. And I'm going to put a little bit of lubrication on here. And I'm set to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm telling you to take a 25 thousandths pass, even though what I'm taking is about 50. So with this, make sure that I'm on fine, and we're going to go ahead and gently run across this. Now there are some calculations for how many inches per minute that this should be, and we're going to do those. But for the sake of this video, it's just being able to see how to set this up and what it looks like. So we're going to go ahead and run back through now that we went all the way across, okay? And this is a great time to kind of point out the fact that laying out is a wonderful thing. The other thing is also you can take that, set your tool, and then bring your tool down like 5/1000 and then make a very, very, very small cut, and then take your calipers and kind of measure it and make sure that you're right where you're supposed to be. That's a really good method of making sure you're on the right track and not scrapping parts. Otherwise, you can dive into it like this, and if I measure that and that's wrong, guess what? My part's scrapped, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to dial up another 25 thousandths, which is actually 50 here. Remember, my goal is 125. So I'm going to turn this back on, and I'm going to dab that on there, and I'm going to come up close and make sure that I'm at a moderate pace here. Shouldn't be hammering. This is roughly what this thing should sound like as it's going through. And I want to make sure I get all the way through to the other side, and then I'm going to gently bring it back. Listen, if there's a lot of chips laying in that slot, wipe those out, because recirculating chips can just end up causing some trouble. All right, and then we're going to stop there, and we're going to go ahead and take another cut. This time I'm actually taking the 25 thousandths, because remember I went 125. Again, you're going to be doing 25 5 times. For the sake of this video, I'm shortening that up. So again, nice slow pace. This is roughly what it should look like. Yes, the tool is smoking, that's okay. It's just starting to burn slightly the cutting fluid that I put on there, and that is fine. Okay, if you see a flame, that's a problem, but I don't think we're going to get there. All right, so then we're going to go back across here and turn that off. And we already know where our position is, so we don't have to worry about it because we picked it up. And I'm going to go to course and drive this out of the way. So from this point right here, what makes sense, and again, you should have already kind of checked to make sure that you knew where you were supposed to be with the part. Okay, so you were, as you did your first 5 thousandths pass, you take a quick look at it and see if it's right. That's about 250, it's within tolerance. And my slot is 500 on the money, okay? So that's how we're gonna cut that slot. But again, we'll set it with the paper, and then it's always a good idea to bring it up about 5 thousandths and then cut there. And then with that 5 thousandths cut, you can see where the scratch or the cut is, and you can make that measurement to know and make sure that you're right on the right spot. Now, the other thing before you go and dismount anything or change your tool, as a matter of fact, what you want to do is you want to take a file and you want to knock these edges off while it's in the machine. Don't take it out of the machine and take it over to the bench. It's okay. It's already in a vise. You're going to want to take that file and make sure that that burr is off of there. That way you can turn this over and you can actually take a depth measurement on this, okay? And you take your depth measurement before you pull it out, because if you have to, remember, paper it varies in thickness, so you may have to make a small adjustment as far as the depth on it. It's easy. You already got your number. You make your adjustment and then go ahead and cut it across.